Hi guys, welcome back. In today's video I'll be showing you an easy way to achieve this beautiful halter neck backless jumpsuit. If this looks like what you want to learn how to make, then you want to keep watching this video, and let's get started. To begin, we are going to be drafting on a pattern paper, and we'll be drafting only the front on the pattern paper. So I got just one paper for this, and then I had to cut and add it, okay, because it was not long enough. I had to cut and add it on the lower part to give me the length I am working with. And then I went ahead to mark 2.5 inches for my crotch extension, and I ruled that all the way from the top down to the lower part of this paper. So you can get your crotch extension by dividing your hip measurement by 4. Whatever you get, to divide it by 4 again, okay, and then you can go ahead to add half inch to that, okay, because this is a free jumpsuit, okay, it doesn't have to be tight. So you add about half inch on your crotch extension, okay, what you get, and then you can mark that down. And then I went ahead to mark the shoulder to the chest line, the shoulder to the waistline, and then the shoulder to the hip line. Initially I wanted to work with 15 inches for my waistline, but I later changed that to 16 inches, okay. That's shoulder to my waistline, I used 16 inches, and then I also connected that with a straight line, and then I also went ahead to connect my chest line with a straight line as well. The next thing I'm going to do is to label my lines, the chest line, the waistline, and then the hip line. And then I'm going to be marking my crotch depth, okay, and I'll be placing my tape on my waistline. I divide my hip measurements by 4, and then you can add 2.5 or 3 inches to that, okay, since this is a free jumpsuit, okay. Just add 2.5 or 3 inches to your hip measurement divided by 4 to get your crotch depth. So mine is 11.5 inches, and I went ahead to mark that. And then I'm going to take the shoulder measurement I'm working with divided by 2, place that on the shoulder line and also on the chest line, and then I'm going to connect that with a straight line as well. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to mark out the neck width I'm working with, which is 3 inches, and the neck depth 3 inches as well. Remember I said this is the front, okay. And then I'm going to come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and then I'm just going to connect that to the neckline. And then I'm going to create my front armhole, okay. Divide what I have on the armhole line by 2, and then go in by half of an inch on that point, take my bust measurement divided by 4, and then create my armhole curve, okay. So if you've been following this channel, we do this a lot on the channel, so you should understand this step by now. And then I'm going to take my waist measurement divided by 4. I'm going to mark that down, and then I'm going to connect it to the chest line, and then I'm going to mark the hip measurements divided by 4 as well, and then connect that to the waistline. Whatever I marked on the hip line, I'm going to be taking that measurement all the way down to the end of this pattern paper. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and curve my crotch line, okay, just give it this curve like this. And then after that, the next thing we are going to do is to add our allowance, okay. So I'll just go ahead and add 2 inches all the way down, okay. So I added 2 inches all the way down, and then I'll just go ahead to connect it with my rule. If you've come this far and you've not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Please do well to hit on the subscribe button, and also turn on the notification bell to get notified each time I post a new video. And please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful, and also do not forget to drop your questions in the comments if you have any questions. The next thing I'm going to do is to come down by 2 inches from the chest line, and then I'm going to connect it to this point of the neckline. I'll use the curved part of my rule to do this, okay. Just connect it all the way down, and then after that I'm going to go ahead to cut out, okay. So just watch carefully to see the part I'm going to cut out. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go. So this is how it looks after cutting out. The next thing I'm going to do is to mark 1.5 inches on my neckline. Okay, just mark 1.5 inches apart. Okay, I wanted to use 1.25, but I said it was not going to work, so I marked 1.5 inches apart on that neckline. And then on the waistline I marked 3 inches. Okay, so I'm going to connect from the waistline all the way to the neckline like this, and then I'm going to connect it all the way down to the end of this paper.
I don't want no rest, echoing around these walls, fighting to create a song. I don't want to miss a beat.
So I'm just going to label 1, 2 and 3. Okay, so I don't mix up my pieces, and then I'm going to cut out.
Through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays, and on we'll go. Through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
This is how it looks after cutting out. The next thing I'm going to do is to fold my fabric into two, and then I'm going to be placing my pieces on it. Okay, so we are just going to be spreading the pieces on the main fabric. So this is how it's going to look like. I'm going to mark a straight line on the waistline. Okay, I'm just going to mark that so that it matches the fabric. Okay, the waistline of the pattern paper matches the line on the fabric. And then for the neck, I'm going to spread it in such a way that it's going to be my exact shoulder measurement. Okay, so that's 7 inches right there. So that's how wide I spread it. And then I am going to pin it down, so make sure you pin yours down, okay, so it doesn't move out of place. Okay, just find something to hold it down to the fabric. And then on the top part, I'm going to mark 1.5 inch. Okay, I'm going to add 1.5 inch to it. Okay, just mark it. And then on the waist, I have my spread at about 2 inches apart. And then on the lower part, I'm going to be spreading at 5 inches. Okay, just spread it out at 5 inches apart. The width of your spread totally depends on how wide you want yours to be. Okay, and if you want yours very wide, then maybe you'll be needing more fabric, because for this particular one I used 3 yards of fabric to achieve this. To cut, I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch on the center front like this, and then on the neckline I'm going to cut out the neckline. Remember, we had added 1.5 inches on the neckline, and then on the armhole, okay, we are going to be adding 1/2 inch as well. And then on the side, you can also go ahead to add 1/2 inch and then cut all the way down, or you can just cut exactly what you have on your paper all the way down. And then for this part, I just went ahead to slash it open. Okay, so after that, I'm just going to take out my pin, because we are going to be using the front to cut the back. So we'll introduce our other fabric. Okay, the remaining fabric, I'm just going to introduce that and then fold it into two as well. I'll be using one piece of my front because this fabric is usually very slippery. I just want to use one piece of this front now to trace out the back. So you see the way I folded it on the armhole, that's how we are going to be folding it when we place it on the back. So this is my remaining fabric. I went ahead to fold it into two, and then now I'm just going to place the front piece on it. I'll be making sure that I leave some allowance on the center. Okay, that's the center back. Push your fabric backwards a bit, okay, and then leave some allowance of about 1.5 or 2 inches depending on the size you are working with. Okay, because the crotch extension for the back is going to be longer than the crotch extension for the front. So on the armhole, I went ahead to mark, and then I'm going to connect that with a straight line. Okay, so that's the armhole for the front. I went ahead to mark that because that's where the back is going to start from, and then the side of the front, we're just going to trace exactly what we have. But on the crotch extension, we are going to be extending it by 1.5 inch. Okay, so I went ahead to mark how deep I want my back to be. I had marked 17 inches, okay, from the top of my fabric, 17 inches downwards. but I later decided to change that to about 19 inches thereabout. So this is how 17 inches looks like. I went ahead to add 1 inch. I wasn't satisfied. I still went ahead to add about 1 inch again. Okay, and this is how it looks. So the next thing we are going to do now is to make sure that we add allowance. Okay, so if you are going to use 19 inches for yours, make sure you go ahead to add your sewing allowance of about 1.5 inches or so. So I went ahead to maintain the 17 inches. Okay, that's with my allowance for attaching my elastic, and then on the side, that's the armhole part of it, I went ahead to also add 1.5 inches. Okay, so that wasn't visible on the camera, but I added 1.5 inch on the side of the armhole, and then I'm just going to slash open this part of the back as well. Okay, so if you watch carefully, you understand how I went ahead to cut this. Like I said, for the side of the back, we are just going to trace exactly what we have on the front all the way down. So if you don't want your own back to be deep, you can just go ahead to cut it straight on the line that you had marked. Okay, that's the first line that we marked. You can go ahead to cut it straight, like you don't need to go down too deep on your back the way I did. So the next thing we are going to do is to join our front pieces. Okay, right sides facing each other, and then sew by 1/2 inch all the way to the crotch extension. And then we are going to do the same for the back as well, so by 1/2 inch all the way to the crotch extension. And then after sewing, this is how the back looks like, and then this is how the front looks like. So the next thing we are going to do is to take our back piece. Okay, and then we are going to be hemming this part, okay, by 1/2 inch and then 1 inch to create our channel for the elastic. So as you can see, I've gone ahead to hem it, and then I'm just going to be passing my elastic through the channel, okay, all the way to the end. The width of your elastic should be half of your waist measurement. Okay, that's your waist measurement divided by 2 minus 2 or 3 inches. Okay, so that's the width of the elastic you should use. So after passing it all the way to the end, I'll just go ahead to either pin it or sew it down so it doesn't fall back inside. And then the next thing we are going to do is to work on the front. For the front, what we are going to do is to create a channel for our rope to pass through, and then on the armhole, I'll just go ahead to hem that like this, and then I'll do the same for the other side. And then I went ahead to cut a straight long piece of fabric measuring 1.5 inch width, and then cut it very long, okay, as long as you want it to be. Then I'll just go ahead to fold it in and then sew it down, and then I'm just going to pass it through the neckline. So if you don't want to fix a rope on your neckline, if you want a collar, just go ahead to gather the neckline back to the initial neckline measurement on the pattern paper, and then you can now attach your collar. So after fixing my rope, this is how it looks. The next thing I'm going to do now is to join the front and the back pieces together, right sides facing each other. So I'm just going to take the back piece and then place it on the armhole of the front, and then I'm just going to sew it all the way down, okay, on this side and on the other side as well. And then on the crotch part of this jumpsuit, we are going to be joining the front and the back crotch together. Okay, so we are going to join from one end to the other end, okay, from this middle all the way to the other end, and then join on the other side as well. So after doing that, this is how it looks. Okay, so you can see that our jumpsuit is already looking beautiful. So make sure you iron your seam, okay, press open your seam so it relaxes on the right side. And then after that, the next thing to do is to go ahead and hem the lower part of the jumpsuit, and then give it a good press. If you have any questions, please do not forget to drop your questions in the comments. Thank you for stopping by. See you in my next one. Bye.